Hello, it's Jane Miller. I'm so happy to be with you today on this lovely spring day. I think the winter is finally passing. What do you think? And not to worry, as most of you know, I'm a skier, so I don't mind it very much at all. Hey, today in our lesson, again, so glad to have you all with us. We are going to head back and review lesson 7, the Trample the Terror Barrier. And we are also going to um, work on the new lesson 8, which is the lesson on praxis. So one of the things in what I love about the videos are all the introductions that Sandy Gallagher presents to us, and she has some great words. And just let me share a piece of a letter that she's provided for us. And she says, in the last lesson dealing with the terror barrier, you became aware of how difficult and uncomfortable it can be to either originate or accept and execute a new idea that's not in harmony with your conditioning. So our paradigm or subconscious conditioning can put up a tremendous battle. It could be compared by mixing oil with water. They repel each other. When this takes place within the mind, the central nervous system is affected, instantly causing doubt and fear and anxiety. The usual procedure when this happens to an individual is that they immediately let go of the new idea and step back into safety, as Maslow suggested. However, when we do this, we are letting the old conditioning or the paradigm win. And when that happens, there's no growth. And when we are going to get into this lesson 8 on praxis, it's very closely aligned with the session on terror barrier, because it also deals with the two completely different belief systems that operate within the mind of a single individual. And that can be true of teams as well. We can hear someone saying, I believe in this, but their behavior is really showing that they believe in something else. So I think you're going to enjoy this so very much. By seriously studying all these concepts, you've been developing an understanding that will cause you to believe and that your team believes that they are really capable of accomplishing results that you previously thought or believed you could not. When you reach this point, you will become aware of the value of this particular lesson. And as William James stated, believe and your belief will create the fact. So here we are at session 8 of Thinking into Results, and we're all becoming aware that there's a pattern for us to follow in the development of our potential that will enable us to progressively move in the direction we really want to go. So again, today we're going to talk about the action steps that you committed to in lesson 7. We'll debrief the terror barrier individual worksheet and look at the team worksheet, and then we'll move on to lesson 8, the power of praxis. So going back to lesson 7, each of us were to identify an action step that would more progressive movement towards our goals. So I'd like to hear from a few folks on just how it went when you came up with the action step, and what happened, what was the experience, and we'll go from there. So as you're thinking about that, who would begin? Thank you. So again, we're talking about our action steps, and how did it go? Did you do it? What was the experience? If you didn't do it, why not? By doing the action steps you came up with, do you think they'll make a difference? And can you keep it going on an ongoing basis? What do you need to keep going? And if you did take the action step, what was the resulting impact? Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experiences. You know, if you're listening to this via recording, you're reviewing it, stop the recording and answer again the questions. Go through those action steps that you took or you did not, and really become aware of what that meant for you. You know, these exercises that we're doing are causing us to, to open up our minds and maybe think about and discuss things with others that maybe you wouldn't have discussed previously, but this is a great form of dialogue, and I appreciate everyone's communication. And just doing this, our communication's bound to improve. And when that happens, results improve too. Let's talk about the terror barrier. And this is the DVD that you watched. And so now you've become aware of this thing that we refer to as the terror barrier. And everyone would probably agree that this wasn't a new experience. A lot of the material in our program is nothing new. But the way we're becoming aware of it is totally new. So we've probably all experienced the terror barrier before. It just was that at the time we didn't understand what was happening and why. If this is the only thing we learn in the program, it will have been an extremely valuable lesson. We've been experiencing this terror barrier from a very early age and possibly are still allowing us to let it stop us dead in our tracks from time to time. I know for me, I have to consistently be aware of it. And as I reach new and better goals, hey, I hit the terror barrier all the time, but at least now I know what it is, and I know that I can get through it. So think about, do you remember doing anything that really scared you? Let's go back to maybe your youth, like jumping off the high dive board or being in a play. Who can share? Yes. Piano recitals were one of mine. Well, let's go to the participant guide and let's turn to page 96 and talk about for a few minutes the terror barrier worksheet. Thank you, and we're back on page 96. So there it is, and we find that the way through the terror barrier here is what? Knowledge, right? So we can move from ignorance and that worry and doubt and fear and the anxiety that is the terror barrier and move to freedom. Move to freedom by using our knowledge and choosing the positives, right? Choosing to create that positive thought pattern and feelings and create that vibration that's positive that will cause us to do the actions, right? And we do this by repetition and studying and understanding, having that faith that we talked about earlier. So at this time in the worksheet on page 96, we want to review the goals that we talked about way back in lesson 1, right? And ask ourselves, is this what I really want? Or did I write things down that I'm just willing to settle for? Because if we're settling for it, we're not going to have the momentum to get through this terror barrier when it comes, right? So answer me, or answer for yourself if you wish. Is the goal I set really what I want or what I'm settling for? And if you're settling, how can I change that to make it into what I really want? Now, if you knew you had all the talent, ability, and resources that you needed to accomplish something beyond that which you're working on, what would it be? What would it be? So take your goal and step it up a notch in that space there. So what you've done with this crazy new stepping it up is that you've just categorized something as a Y-type idea, as we've found in the terror barrier lesson. A Y-type idea right? The fact that you want to do it and can mentally see it puts it in the why category automatically. But without getting emotionally involved, and if you keep the idea strictly in your conscious mind, that's going to create these vibrations. So play that if game, as the worksheet says. If I did this, what would happen? If I did that, what would happen? List all the benefits that you possibly can, right? From the top of your head, your conscious mind. So at this point, you're not deciding to do it, you're just thinking about it. You're not creating that XY, you're not creating the disturbing your old paradigm at all, right? We're just in reason here, as shown on the slide. And then as you move on in the worksheet to number 4, if you thought about all the benefits that a person would receive from going ahead with the goal they just described, and you were making a report to them, and you're advising them on how foolish it would be if you just didn't go do it, what would that sound like? What would you say to them? See, if you're looking from the outside in at someone else's, it's easier to see, right? Because we don't have their paradigm, right? What happens is the fear and the doubt and the worry come in when we think about it. So turn to page 98, right? Let's talk about what it's going to look like when you're going to go for that big goal and bust through that terror barrier, right? The moment that we instruct you to do that, you're going to hear or feel, see the fear and the doubt and the worry. It's going to speed right to your mind. So write them down. List all the fears and the doubts and the worries. So those are the worksheets that you're going to work on. We're learning a beautiful truth that even the strongest among us will hit the terror barrier. And Bob Proctor will tell you he hits it all the time, but he knows what it is. Excuse me. Now let's talk about the fears and the doubts and the worries, some that you came up with, and how you can break through the terror barrier. So is there anyone in the group that would share a couple of ways that come to mind on how to break through the terror barrier? Thank you. Yes, those are great. Thank you. So getting support, wonderful. Writing every day, that's great. Looking at your goal card, wonderful. What else? That's great. Now, as you're working on this with your teams, those worksheets begin on page 100. Let's move on to the power of praxis, lesson 8. When you've watched the DVD, and if you are listening to this via recording, please stop the DVD now or stop the recording now and watch the DVD, pardon me. Now, as you listen to it, pay attention to the fact that sometimes each of us operates with 2 belief systems relative to just one subject. We have a belief in our conscious mind, but then there's one that exists in the subconscious mind. So being aware of this, you're going to see and understand why we so often get stuck. We'll also realize how to and why changing this is a simple procedure, but because of our programming, can be extremely difficult to implement. It's why, most people take countless inherited and often ridiculous beliefs to the grave with them after permitting their beliefs to control them throughout their lives. But, we have a wonderful opportunity to change this. So again, think about those belief systems and the power of praxis to integrate the beliefs with the behavior, right? You may have this belief in your intellectual mind. You may say, I'm worth $1 million. But in the subconscious mind, oh, who's fooling who? And then, as you know, the subconscious mind is where the paradigms lie, and they are the things that create the vibration that cause our behaviors and our actions and ultimately our results. And we've been doing a lot of work on creating the correct beliefs using the faculties of our mind from way back there in early lessons, right? Wonderful. You may want to go back to lesson 6, where we talk about environment is but our looking glass. Do you remember that lesson? What a great thing to think about, creating the environment that you want. You know, if your external world is a mirror, what is it telling you, right? And how do you want to be? And how can you improve your self-image? We did so many worksheets back in the pages in the early 80s in the participant guide. And we talked about how we can change that. So take a look back between our time next time. Because James Allen said, we think in secret and it comes to pass. Environment is but our looking glass. So all we need to do is really look at our results to see what we're thinking. And then review again, Trample the Terror Barrier in lesson 7 and go back to those pages around 100 and work on some of the doubts and fears and how you can break through your terror barrier. Because remember, if we keep our old paradigms, we're going to stay in bondage, right? And when we start to think about that new idea, right? The new idea, once we introduce it down to our subconscious mind by the writing and the images that we hold and using the faculties of our mind, we're going to get that craziness going on and hit that terror barrier. But as long as you understand what's going on, you'll be able to work right through it. Won't it be wonderful when there's freedom? And see, once you do this, you know then that you'll be able to do it over and over again. And as leaders, we'll be able to help our teams and our families and our organizations. Because if the only thing we learn in the lesson is an awareness of what this is, it can be so freeing, so freeing. So thank you for your good work on lesson 7 with the terror barrier. And again, power of praxis in lesson 8, you're going to, because praxis is the integration of belief with behavior. And when this happens, we can accomplish all we've been wanting to. But we have to integrate the correct belief with our behavior, right? Remember this from way back in, oh my goodness, in the early lessons. I think we were first introduced to it in lesson perhaps 1. Or back in 6 in the self-image lesson. There's a difference between wishing for something and being ready to receive it. No one's ready for a thing until they believe they can acquire it. The state of mind must be belief, not mere hope or wish. An open-mindedness is essential to belief. Closed minds will just not accept the idea. They just won't. And you can see this in a person's mind or on a person's face when you talk about this and they introduce a new belief, but if they just can't wrap their arms around it, it's so frustrating. Can't wrap their mind around it. So we go from wishing and hoping for a thing to believing and being ready to receive it. Now, there's a participant worksheet section that I want to get you started on in lesson 8. When you go back and review the lesson and do the readings, this will start on page 110. 110. It's the Power of Praxis individual worksheet, and then there's one for teams as well. So I want you to look at the following, the sections and the words, and then describe what your present results are in those areas. So financial wealth, your business or career, the economy, your vacations, your home, your relationships, right? And you'll fill these out just as you believe them to be. All right? Then on page 113, we're going to use the thinking and the dreaming and the feeling and emotions. On page 113, now we're going to rewrite these areas of our life and what they would be like if you were to create exactly what you wanted. And you'll answer the questions the second time as if you've already created what you wanted. Think, but don't spend any time wondering whether it's going to happen or how it's going to happen. That's irrelevant at this point. So again, page 110, we start on using your current beliefs and thinking, your present results in the areas. And then on page 113, we're going to stop and think about what we really want. Is it a first class vacation, your dream home, the kind of income you've always wanted and dreamed about? And you'll answer the questions as if you already have it. Because if you can hold it in your mind, remember, you can hold it in your hand. As you're writing, you're going to feel some strong emotions coming up, and I invite you to embrace them. And if an action item comes to mind, jot it down, capture it. Because remember, your thinking causes, right, the images, and the images stir emotions. And emotions are what creates the vibrations that cause actions. And with every action, there's a reaction, and that's what your result is. Isn't that wonderful? So next time we might talk about some of the action steps that you took. Thank you. Thank you so much for committing to the program and all the hard work in your work. Whew. It was a great lesson on Praxis, and I invite you again to repeat lessons, go back and view the DVDs to get some further awareness. You know, your learning has been so key so far, and you know, although there might be a few concepts that might have been brand new to you, there's nothing really here in this program that is a challenge to our intellect. But carrying out the exercises sometimes is emotional tug of war. We can lose it if we don't give it the time and attention. So I appreciate you continuing on with all the time and attention that you've been spending, probably 4 or more hours per week. So the win that you're going to experience, though, as individuals or families or organizations, it's beyond our imagination. The changes in your results are going to be absolutely phenomenal. Hey, look at the cell phone. Look at the changes that have taken place in just the past 10 years. Heck, I think 20 years ago, we had those big bag phones. And I remember in my office at the electric company where I work, we got one for the entire department for 12 of us. And then we would share it and we would take it along in the car when we'd go out on field visits. Now we all have them. You know, we have 2 of them. We have one for work, one for family. The children have them. You know, things we're doing today, you know, our grandparents would have thought virtually impossible. Not even our grandparents, maybe even we. You know, I remember watching Star Trek and laughing when, Cap Kirk would whip out that whatever he had there, flip phone maybe? How are they going to talk to people across the airwaves like that with no telephone cord? Isn't that great? So, one of the important aspects of just going through the exercises as a group is that we have the support and the benefit and the synergy that's created from all of us taking part. So, I appreciate all of you taking part. You know, I'm grateful for not only these programs, but my involvement, but my opportunity to share all this with you. So we'll see you in the next lesson where we're going to be reviewing Lesson 8 and all your fine work that you'll be doing, and then move on to Lesson 9. Thank you so much.